This is David looking with GrassFlap. We're getting ready to do an installation of a GrassFlap onto this Bradley 36 inch. So I want to walk you through the steps. First thing we have to do is lower the deck and remove the belt guard on the side here. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and remove the factory chute. Let's go ahead and remove the belt guard so we have access there as well. Okay, with that out of the way, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and assemble the hinge plate and blocker plate using the 1/4 inch bolts, the carriage bolts that are provided in the kit. We're going to put these in, lay the hinge plate down, set the blocker plate on top of it, and go ahead and install the nuts. When we set the blocker plate on, you're going to basically center the bolts in the center of the slot. That's a good starting point. You can make some fine-tuning adjustments later if you need to. This takes a 7/16 socket. Now we're going to go ahead and install the assembly onto the mower deck itself. Note that the tabs for the GrassFlap itself go on the front side of the factory tabs. We use the 3/8 by 1 inch carriage bolts to connect it to the mower deck. And we're going to go ahead and position the hinge plate against the side of the mower, so I'll just use my knee to hold it up tight. Then we'll go ahead and tighten up all 4 carriage bolts. With that done, we're going to go ahead and set the cable in place. So we're going to take the end with the ball only on it and slip it through under the carriage frame, and then we're going to go ahead and connect the other end, the end with the clevis on it. We're going to connect that to the spring mount. When we install that, we are just going to run the jam nuts so they are just onto the threaded fitting, just enough that the rubber boot can fit on there. So we get the foot pedal on down here. The foot pedal gets mounted just in line here with the edge of this pivot point, and then the cable comes off here, runs up here between the gas tank on up to the front of the mower. We get up here, so it tucks down next to the battery and goes underneath this oil fill line so that it stays down here on top of the frame. Then over here, we've got it zip tied to this deck lift assist bar right here. And then it runs down underneath, and we've got another zip tie. And this is important because there's these pulleys down here. We'll get into this if we're not careful. So we've got another zip tie right here that holds it up, and I'll show you how to set that. And then, of course, it runs on over to here. So let me raise the deck up so you see what it looks like in the up position. So in the up position here, here's what we're worried about. This cable right here needs to be just above this pulley. You can't be real high because then when you lower the deck, it creates strain out here on the fitting itself. So you want to be, no more than a 1/2 inch above this pulley with this zip tie that's added on here. A little lower would actually be better. And then, so then we put the cover on. Let's see, get this. So what's going on with the cover is the cable runs underneath here tucks right in here. And the reason for this is because you got this muffler right here and you got to make sure that the cable is protected from the heat of that muffler. Now that we've seen where the cable is going to route, now we're going to go ahead and connect the cable to the pedal itself. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the rubber boot and the first jam nut off the fitting. Then we're going to go ahead and connect the clevis to the end of the wire. And then we're going to go ahead and connect that clevis to the pedal itself. We use the 1/4 inch pin that came in the kit along with the cotter pin. Now that we have the cotter pin in place, next thing we want to do is go ahead and hook the cable fitting into the pedal itself. We'll slip the wire into the slot that's there, run the jam nuts down where they're tight, push the rubber boot back on in place. And notice that I've got the jam nuts for the cable almost all the way onto the fitting. That's a good starting point. Next step then is go ahead and put the 5/16 by 1 carriage bolts into the pedal. Now we're going to set the pedal up on the back of the mower there. There's a little ledge there that we can hook it to. And we're going to use this keeper, if you will. We're going to slip it in on top of those carriage bolts to keep them from turning. And behind the ledge there, or the piece of steel there that we've hooked the pedal to. We'll go ahead and slide the pedal over to where it's just a couple of inches away from the right side of the mower. The farther to the right you can get it, usually the better it is. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten those two bolts up. I usually start with the one on the left-hand side, and then we'll tighten the one on the right-hand side. This works to keep that keeper from coming out of position. Go ahead and snug these down tight. They actually form that keeper a little bit as you snug them down so it stays in place. I'm going to go back over to the flap side. We're going to go ahead and connect the cable at this point. So we're going to slip this bushing into the hole. Okay, so the pin, when we put the pin in, we want the head of the pin to be on the same side as the spring. Go ahead and put our clevis pin in. And we'll go ahead and wrap this around so that it doesn't come out and doesn't get snagged. Go ahead and connect the spring now. I use a pair of channel locks and just pull on the open side of the hook, put it around the spring bolt. I'm going to go ahead and snug the jam nuts for the cable. You don't have to over tighten these. Get them snug and they'll be fine. So with the spring mount in place here, this guard has to be notched to fit around the spring mount. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and measure 1 inch off this edge for our first mark, and then go 2 1/8 inches. So you'll be 3 1/8 for this spot, and then cut this notch out in the guard so that it will fit down over the spring mount. So let me show you what it looks like. And now before we tighten them up on the pedal end, what I want to show you is how to adjust the height of your pedal. So depending on where you position the jam nuts, you can raise or lower the pedal. Now that we've got the pedal where the position we like it, then we'll go ahead and snug these jam nuts up as well. So finally, now that we've got everything in place, I want to show you that you can close the foot pan, raise the pedal tab up, close the foot pan, let it back down. And then operationally, it's the same motion we always have, a push and release on the pedal, lets it open and close. So there you have it, GrassFlap installed on a Bradley mower with a TEF pedal